I can pray. This is Andrew.
Thank you. Thank you. Please.
All right. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time. Thank you for your word. Thank you for your son. And I ask that today be a blessing that our you would open up our hearts and minds to your word, and that we would accept it, receive it, and live it out through our actions and as we walk. In your son's name, I pray and thanks. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Great prayer.
Thank you.
Okay. And I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right. I'm just going to talk today a little bit about Cain building a city and going through his lineage a little bit here and seeing maybe a little bigger picture that's being concealed that we can kind of dig into. We'll just read from verse 11 to the end of this chapter to get all the context of what we'll be talking about. So verse 11, and this is Yehoshua speaking to Cain, and now you are cursed more than the ground which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood by your hand. When you till the ground, it will not again give its strength to you, and you shall be a vagabond and a fugitive in the earth. And Cain said to Yehoshua, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me out from the face of the earth today, and I shall be hidden from your face, and I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. And it shall be that anyone who finds me shall kill me. And Yehoshua said to him, therefore, whoever kills Cain shall be avenged 7 times. And Yehoshua set a mark upon Cain so that anyone who found him should not kill him. And Cain went out from the presence of Yehoshua and lived in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And he built a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. And Irad was born to Enoch, and Irad fathered Mehujael, and Mehujael fathered Methusael, and Methusael fathered Lamech. And Lamech took 2 wives to himself. The name of the first one was Ada, the name of the other was Zillah. And Ada bore Jabal. He was the father of those who dwell in tents and with cattle. And his brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all those playing the harp and the organ. And Zillah also bore Tubal-Cain, the hammerer of every engraving tool of bronze and iron. And the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. And Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice, wives of Lamech, listen to my speech. For I have killed a man because of my wound, and a young man because of my hurt. For Cain is avenged 7 times, and Lamech 77 times. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son, and called his name Seth. For she said, God has appointed me another seed instead of Abel, because Cain killed him. And there was also a son born to Seth, and he called his name Enos. Then men began to call upon the name of Yehoshua. So we're going to just talk a little bit about how Cain went out and built for himself a city. He went away from God and established himself in this land of Nod, which we discussed, literally means vagrancy, exile, or wandering, and built for himself a city, naming it after his firstborn son. This detail is illustrating how Cain's rebellious nature continued even as he rebels against what God just pronounced over him in verse 12. In verse 12, we read that God said, you are going to be a vagabond and a fugitive in the earth. And he's supposed to be this wanderer all the days of his life. So upon hearing this, Cain must have said in his heart something like, oh yeah, I'll show you, and I'll go out and establish myself. I'll put down some roots, and I'll make a legacy. I'll build a city and make a name for myself. Building a city is the opposite of what it means to be a wanderer or a nomad. And it is the mentality of those who walk according to the carnal nature. Those who walk in the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh. And this carnal or beast nature that we've discussed does not want to submit to God and to his words. In fact, the carnally minded will do the opposite of what God has said, because God and his words are spiritual. So those who walk according to the flesh cannot hear or obey the words of a spiritual God. And this is that enmity we read about in chapter 3, which we'll revisit shortly, that God placed between the woman's seed and the serpent's seed. So this is the carnal mindset of a child of the wicked one. It has this rebellious nature, wanting to reverse the curse, so to speak. So here we are, and we'll go right over here to Genesis 3:15, which is that part of the curse that I was speaking about when he says, I will put enmity between you, that is the serpent, and the woman, and between your seed, that is the serpent's seed, and her seed. He will bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. So we know that he is speaking of the Messiah, who would crush or bruise the head of the devil. So in that same spirit of rebellion, we see that the devil and his seed are continually rebelling against this word. They're seeking to, again, do the opposite of what God has said and seek to be the ones who crush the head of the righteous seed instead. As we discussed in a previous study, by telling us that Cain rose up against Abel to kill him, the text could be alluding to this very thing, that perhaps he rose up above Abel's head to crush it. The point being that it is the nature of the beast to want to rebel against the discipline of God. By killing Abel, Satan entered into Cain, using him to begin his attempt to destroy the righteous seed line of the promised Messiah right away. And he uses the carnally minded to accomplish his will. Men like Esau, who sought to kill Jacob, and like Pharaoh, who sought to kill all the Hebrew babies, and Herod, who also sought to kill the Hebrew babies, and Yehoshua himself when he was here in the flesh. This pattern of the wicked seeking to eradicate the righteous seed of the woman will continue until the end of this age. So Cain dwelt in the land of Nod. We'll go back there really quick. Here we are. He dwelt in the land of Nod, built a city, and he named the city Enoch after his own son. So there is some real significance to this and to why Cain chose this name that I'd like to show you. So we're going to look at the name Enoch. It's the Hebrew name, Hanok, and it means, you can see, it means dedicated. And it's the city which Cain built and named after himself. And this will be made clear in just a moment what they mean by that. And then I want to look at the root word. The root word for Hanok, which is a proper name, is this word Hanach, which also means to dedicate, to train, dedicate, inaugurate. And you may recognize this word Hanach as it is associated with the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah, which is known as the Feast of Dedication. So this word Hanach, which means to dedicate, is only used 4 times in the Bible, in the Old Testament. And all of those times, except for one, are referring to the dedication of a house. The 4th use of this word Hanach, or dedicate, is here in Proverbs 22:6. Now, many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with this verse. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. So this word train up, that they're translating as train up, is the word Hanach. So it's dedicate a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. There's a couple things I want to look at in this proverb. One thing is I want to look at, well, here's the word train up. Again, it's dedicate, Hanach. But this word the way, I want to take a peek at that one. The word way in Hebrew is derech, and it means way, road, distance, path. Um, are you guys seeing this? I've got a little bit of a lag on my side, so I want to make sure you're with me. There it goes.
Yeah, we see it.
Okay. So derech is a road, a way, a path, journey, a direction. It can also be interpreted as a manner or habit, a course of life, of moral character. So this same word derech is used in a variety of ways. So this proverb typically is translated like this: train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. But the Hebrew doesn't actually say this in the way he should go. I'm not really sure how that interpretation came to be, but most interpretations say in the way he should go. But if we were to look at this, what's translated as he should go, we see it's the Hebrew word pay, which is mouth. So this is also translated as an opening. So we've got a mouth or opening. It's kind of the idea of the very beginning or from the start or something like that. So I think a more accurate translation might read, dedicate, chanak, a child at the mouth or opening of his way. He will also not turn aside from it when he is older. So it's kind of like this idea of starting them out on the right foot. But I'm also thinking it can also mean the opposite. Like, however you are training up your child at that beginning in that very important place is probably how he's going to end up. Not always, but there's a reason why God asks us to teach our children his ways from a young age.
This is Keith.
So, as I mentioned, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, could that pay also be maybe saying train the child up in the way they should speak, the way they should, because you're trying to raise a prophet, someone of God,
Mm-hmm.
and then he will know God's word.
Could be. It could be. I thought it was interesting because I hadn't noticed that until I started looking into this word for dedicate or train up. But there's a few verses that I think will kind of go along with this idea because, like I'd mentioned, all the three other places this word hanak is used, which is this word being translated as train up, is in regard to a dedication of a house. And families are also houses. So we're going to hop over to Joshua 24:14 through 15 for an example. This is when Joshua says, "Now then fear Yehovah and serve him in sincerity and truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood and in Egypt, and serve Yehovah. And if it seems evil to you to serve Yehovah, choose you this day whom you will serve." So we're being presented with a choice of two ways, if you will. Choose you this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you live. But as for me and my house, we will serve Yehovah. So we can see that we can dedicate our houses to serving Yehovah, as in the houses of our families. But there's also a possibility that we can dedicate our houses to serving another God. Yehovah also said this about Abraham in Genesis 18:19. He says, "For I know him, that he will command his sons and his house after him, and they shall keep the way, derech, of Yehovah, to do justice and judgment. that Yehovah may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken of him. So this one really tied together for me with that dedicate a child in the way he should go. Dedicate the house at the beginning. And that's what Yehovah's saying of Abram. I know him, and he will command his sons, and he will dedicate his house to keep my way. And again, as it's written in Deuteronomy 6:7, I believe that these words are the words we're supposed to teach to our children and our children's children for generations to come. So as parents, we are in fact dedicating our houses and our children onto a path. And I'm of the opinion that there are only two paths. One path is very broad. We know many travel on it, and that path leads to death. But there's another path that is very narrow, and few are going to find that path, and that one leads to life. So if we dedicate our children to Yehovah, to walk in his way, his derech, then the hope is that as they grow older, they will not rebel or turn aside from it, such as the nature of the serpent and his seed is to rebel against the way of Yehovah. However, those who train their children up to walk in their own ways and in the ways of the world, we can kind of just look around us and see that they're also not very likely to stray from their own corrupt ways as they grow older, because they too have been passed down tradition and information from their parents from generation to generation. So we can either pass down what is right and good to our children from generation to generation, as Yehovah has commanded, or we're going to pass down something that is not good to our children from generation to generation. This also reminded me of Messiah's words regarding the little children in Matthew 18:6. And he says, "Whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to stumble, it is better for him that a millstone be hung around his neck and that he be drowned in the depth of the sea." So as parents, it is a great responsibility that we raise our children in the way. So in Genesis 4, going back to Cain and him dedicating this line to himself, this city to himself, here in verse 17, we are given the origin or opening, if you will, of Cain's house and those who came after him. And we're also given the origin or opening of Adam's house and those who came after him. So I'd just like you to consider that Cain's bloodline and Adam's bloodline are each dedicating their houses toward one of these paths. I think this might be the place where these two paths are first made known to us. Notice how Cain's bloodline lists all the things that these people have done by the works of their hands and the things that they do. One even boasts of murder. But at the end here, Adam's bloodline simply says, "Then men began to call upon the name of Yehovah." I'm going to address that simple statement in detail next time because there is quite a bit of controversy around it, which I think is unnecessary, but it's important to understand, I think. So I take it at face value that this is when men began to call upon the name of Yehovah. But I believe David made a very poignant statement with his words to Goliath that kind of sum up the distinction that we're seeing between these two seed lines beautifully. One who comes in with the things that they can do and with weapons and things of the flesh, and another seed line that comes in the name of Yehovah. So to Goliath in 1 Samuel 17:45 through 47, it says, "And David said to the Philistine, 'You come to me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of Yehovah of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Yehovah will deliver you into my hand today, and I will strike you and take your head from you which is again those two seeds, and give the bodies of the army of the Philistines to the birds of the air today, and to the wild beasts of the earth, so that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all this multitude shall know that Yehoshua does not save with sword and spear, for the battle is Yahweh's, and he will give you into our hands. So again, what I'm trying to do is kind of just show this distinction between these two seed lines and what some do and what others do. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts or comments on any of that so far? Alrighty. So by naming his firstborn Hanok, which means to dedicate, it could be that Cain was seeking to dedicate his seed as a legacy to himself in the earth. And this is actually a mindset that we see in the earth all around us today. The mentality of those who are of the world. People wanting to make a mark and a name for themselves, leave a legacy behind them. We kind of get a glimpse here in chapter 4 that from Cain comes a line of people dedicated not to Yehoshua and his ways, but to their own ways. Cain is the first of many who seek to build cities and houses and names for themselves and not for God. I refer to them as men of cities. But I'll wait until we get to Genesis 11 with the Tower of Babel to go deeper into that topic, because we know these were men who sought to build a name and a city for themselves as well. For now, I just want to point out how the first chapters in Genesis reveal who the first builders were in the Bible. Recall we learned during our study of man and woman that God is the first builder mentioned in the Bible, which we don't really see in the English translations. It's in the Hebrew. It reveals that he didn't simply create Eve or the woman for Adam, but that he built her for Adam. The Hebrew word built is the same word used here for Cain building a city. So he built the woman from Adam and for Adam. And this is symbolic for how the bride and body of Yehoshua, the Messiah, is also being built from Messiah and for the Messiah as a spiritual house or temple. From the beginning, we see how Yehoshua is building a spiritual house of people for himself. However, the enemy is also building a house for himself. Cain, who the scriptures testify is of his father, the devil, is the first documented builder according to the flesh. And he went out and built a city for himself, these cities of men. But we must not forget that Cain is not the true father of these men of cities. He is of his father, the devil. Therefore, so are all of those who follow in these ways. If we're not working with Yehoshua, who is the Son of God, to build his father's house, then we are working with the men of cities who are building a house for their father, building names for ourselves. Yehoshua is called the stone which the builders have rejected. So these men of cities are the builders that have rejected the living stone, and they are alive and well among us today. One fascinating example, as this carries on through the scriptures into the New Testament, is Judas Iscariot. And so let's just look at him for a minute. Luke 22:3 tells us that Satan entered into Judas, surnamed Iscariot, being of the number of the 12. So Judas Iscariot is of the 12, and now we're being told that Satan entered into him, and we know he betrayed the Messiah. And Yehoshua even identified him as a devil. In John 6:70-71, Yehoshua answered them, saying, "Have I not chosen you the 12, and one of you is a devil?" But he spoke of Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, for it was he who was about to betray him, being one of the 12. So Judas is one of these men of cities, and the name is actually hidden in his surname, Iscariot. So let's look at that really quick. So this is the Greek word Iscariot, and it's telling you it means men of Keriot, and these are of Hebrew origin. So we're going to look at the Hebrew origin of these words. Ish, it's made up of two words, Ish and Keriot. Ish is a man. So this Hebrew word Ish is just the Hebrew word for man. We looked at that back in the creation of man and woman. And the other word is Kyria, which is the singular of Kyriot. Kyriot is plural. So Kyria means city, Kyriot would mean cities. So we can see that Judas Iscariot, his name literally means Judas, man of cities. So again, we're seeing this connection carrying through even into the one who would betray and come and betray the Messiah. So being a man of cities, it could be said that Cain was the first of a long line of Iscariots. The first of a long line of men of cities. Again, we'll wait until we get to the Tower of Babel to go into that fascinating study, but just wanted to point out how this pattern began here with Cain, and it was still alive in Messiah's day and to this day. Does anybody have any comments or questions about that before I move on to the next section? Okie doke. So now I want to look at the Hebrew word son, which I think many of you are familiar with. It's the Hebrew word bane. But one of the descriptions here I think is quite poignant and something that we should think about with regards to these two seed lines that we're seeing. So bane, let's see, is this, I might want to look at this in a, one moment. Maybe it's Strong's. I didn't write which dictionary I wanted to refer to. So I'm not seeing the description. That I thought was in here. Just give me 1 second here. Grandchild, children, youth, justice. I don't know why I'm not seeing it. Oh, because there it is. Sorry, it's in the Strong's. So this is Strong's definition of son, and this is the one I was wanting to pull out, where it says a son as a builder of the family name. So a son, how is the son a builder of the family name? So we see that Cain specifically named his son Dedication or Dedicate, and then he named this city after his son as this builder of his family name. So by this, we can also see how Yehoshua, who is the Son of God, is the builder of the family name of Yahovah. And blessed is he who comes in that name. So all of us who are in the Messiah are a part of this family name. Those who believe in the Son, receive the Father's words through him, have the right to be called children of Elohim, because it is Yehoshua, the Son of God, who is the master builder of the family name and of this household of God. We also understand that when there are no more sons, the family name dies. because it is through the son that the family name can continue. And this is for this reason, I'm sure, that the enemy is trying to eradicate the righteous seed. Wanted to look at the Hebrew word picture for son, which I think we have talked about previously, but here, highlighted here, the ancient pictograph. It's kind of small, so I don't know if you can see that or not, but reading from right to left, we have the bait and we have the noon. And the bait is a house. It literally means house. And then the noon, you can look at this ancient pictograph, and it looks like sperm, like what we think sperm looks like under a microscope, which is symbolic for life, a seed. And so we can see how the son is the life of the house. He's the one that continues the family name. Spiritually speaking, with Messiah, we know he is the life of the house of God. So Cain is certainly making a statement by naming the city after his own seed. He is building a family name. But have you noticed, or did you notice, that although Cain is a physical descendant of Adam, he is not listed as Adam's son? And I believe there's a reason that the scriptures have separated Cain and his seed from Adam and his seed, which we've been seeing this whole time. And that is to again make distinction between these two seeds spoken of in Genesis chapter 3, the enmity that would exist between them. We know that Yehoshua is documented as coming through the seed of Adam. So in Luke 3:38, he goes through his lineage, and at the end it says he's of the son of Enos, the son of Seth, the son of Adam, who was of God, the son of God. Cain is not in there. So looking at the beginning of Adam's lineage in Genesis, which corresponds to this, seems to further illustrate that Cain was no longer a son of God, because remember, Cain refused the discipline of God, and we talked about how that means you are not his sons if you do not hear and receive his discipline. And we've also looked at several places where it says he is, in fact, a son of the wicked one. So Cain is not included in the bloodline of Adam, even though he was a descendant of Adam according to the flesh. And I believe Adam's bloodline begins with Seth and not Cain, to teach us that Cain's sin changed things, as does ours. This distinction is bearing witness to us again of the two seeds and the enmity that will exist and remain between them. Now, we've also looked at this before, I believe, in John 8, but as it applies to what we are talking about, I want to reread Messiah's words to these religious leaders who thought themselves to be of Abraham's seed, and how Yehoshua explained it. So this is John 8:31 through 47. So Yehoshua said to the Jews who believed in him, "If you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." They answered him, "We are offspring of Abraham and have never been enslaved to anyone. How is it that you say you will become free?" Yehoshua said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin. The slave does not remain in the house forever. The son remains forever. So if the son sets you free, you will be free indeed." And then he says this, "I know that you are offspring of Abraham." So he is recognizing their physical descendants of Abraham. But then he says, "Yet you seek to kill me because my word finds no place in you." So now he's making distinction between the two seeds. He says, "I speak of what I have seen with my father, and you do what you have heard with your father." Sorry, I scrolled the wrong way. Verse 39. They answered him, Abraham is our father. Yehoshua said to them, if you were Abraham's children, then you would be doing the works Abraham did. But now you seek to kill me, a man who has told you the truth that I heard from God. This is not what Abraham did. You are doing the works your father did. They said to him, we were not born of sexual immorality. We have one father, even God. Yehoshua said to them, if God were your father, you would love me, for I came from God, and I'm here. I came not of my own accord, but he sent me. Why do you not understand what I say? It is because you cannot bear to hear my word. And this is just, I hope you can hear what's happening here and how it relates to Cain and how he couldn't bear to hear Yahweh's discipline. And he says, you are of your father the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. But because I tell you the truth, believe me. Which one of you convicts me of sin? If I tell the truth, why do you not believe me? Whoever is of God hears the words of God. The reason why you do not hear them is that you are not of God. So it makes it pretty clear in my mind that this distinction being made between the flesh seed and the spiritual seed. So back at Genesis 4, at the end of this chapter, it leaves off by leaving off Cain's bloodline and then coming back to Adam and his seed. And Eve states here that Elohim has appointed her another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain, who was of the devil, murdered. And so we had those two seeds, that the enmity between the two seeds in Genesis 3:15. We understand that one seed is of the serpent, the other seed speaks of Yehoshua, the promised seed of God, who would come through the woman's bloodline and crush the head of the serpent. But I wanted to look at the word enmity, because Yahweh says, I'm going to put enmity between these two seeds. Mm, is it enmity? Hold on. It's not the word I wanted to look at. I wanted to look at the word place or a point. Most translations will say, I will put enmity between you and the woman. So enmity is hatred. They're enemies. We get that. I was actually wanting to look at the word put. Other translations will say appoint. I will appoint enmity. So that is this word sheath. To put, set, to lay, appoint, affix. It's a pretty self-explanatory word. Yehoshua was very clear in his day that men of the world and these religious leaders hated him without a cause, and they would hate those of us also who are in him. And we know that this enmity or hatred is the enmity or hatred that remains between these two seeds to this day. So if they hated him, they will hate you. One seed minds the things of the flesh or carnal nature, the other seed minds the things of the spirit, which are of God and of a heavenly nature. Going back here, I was just going to hit up a couple verses that confirm this. James 4:4 says, adulterers and adulteresses, do you not know that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Therefore, whoever desires to be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. So we're seeing those two seeds here. We don't want to take part in the things that these people of the world are doing. We're supposed to be set apart from the world. Again, Romans 8:5-9 says, for they who are according to the flesh mind, for they who are according to the flesh mind the things of the flesh, but they who are according to the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. So there's those two paths we were talking about at the beginning. Because the carnal mind is enmity against God. Enmity between the seeds. Why? Because the carnal mind is not subject to the Torah of God, neither can it be. And that word subject, meaning it is not obedient. It will not put itself under the ruling authority and government of God. And then verse 8, so then they who are in the flesh cannot please God. But you are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if the Spirit of God dwells in you. But if anyone has not the Spirit of Messiah, who is the Son, he is not of his. He is none of his. Carnal or flesh-minded sons are seeds of the wicked one and are enemies of God, because as it is written, God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. And verse 7 here makes it very clear that, like Cain, these individuals that are enemies to God are enemies because the flesh mind, those who walk in this flesh nature, cannot and will not obey or submit to the Torah of God, which is spiritual in nature, as Paul wrote about in just the previous chapter, saying in Romans 7:14, we know that the law, that's this Torah, is spiritual, but I'm carnal, sold under sin. So here he recognizes our carnal flesh nature, that we were all slaves to sin until the Messiah came and made us free. And so in him we have now received this Spirit of the Messiah who can help us hear, receive, and love this Torah, this law that is spiritual. So we have the carnally minded and the spiritually minded. These are the two seeds that God has appointed, that there will be enmity put between them. And again, we looked at that word to place or appoint, that enmity that was appointed. That is this word Seth, Saith. And so I'm telling you all this because I believe the name of this son that God appointed instead of Abel, his name is Seth. So he's also appointing something here. It's showing us this manifestation and distinction of these two seed lines again. So Cain is of his father the devil. He trained up his children in his ways. And then we see this other seed line of the woman who said, God has appointed me another seed instead of Abel because Cain killed him. And so let's look at the name Seth. It's Shaith, to put, that is, it says substituted, but it is the same word, sheath, which means to appoint. So that's why she said, he has appointed me another son. So yes, I guess substitute is a way of looking at it, but I think more accurately, he is appointing again those two seeds, because we know that whatever God says, it will be done. And even though Satan tried to snuff out the righteous seed line, Yehoshua says, no, I have appointed this enmity between the two seeds. I have appointed Adam's seed and the woman's seed, and I've appointed the seed of the serpent. And these things are going to accomplish the thing that he said. And when Satan entered into Cain and Cain killed his brother, according to the flesh, it would appear that he won. It would have game over, right? But that is really the message Messiah speaks of too, is that the carnally minded will seek to kill the spiritually minded, but they can only destroy the flesh. They cannot destroy the soul. Luke 12:4-5, Messiah says, "And I say to you, my friends, do not be afraid of those who kill the body, and after that have no more that they can do. But I will warn you of him you shall fear. Fear him who, after he is killed, has authority to cast into hell. Yea, I say to you, fear him." So the game was not over then, because they have no authority to harm the soul. That belongs to Yehoshua. And that actually would appear to make Satan's battle completely futile unless, that is, he can win the battle for your soul. And that's really what Paul's talking about in Ephesians 6 with the whole armor of God. So let's read Ephesians 6:10-18, where he says, "Finally, my brothers, be strong in the Lord and the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, so that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the world's rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Therefore take to yourselves the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Therefore stand, having your loins girded about with the truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, take the shield of faith, with which you shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. And take the helmet of salvation, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. Praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, and watching to this very thing with all perseverance and supplication for all the saints." So that is where the true battle lies. It's a spiritual battle. Mr. T.
Hey, that's me. As you've been talking here, a lot of these things are really bringing light to the parable of the sower and the wheat and the tares, right? This enmity between the seeds. Even this armor of God seems to be a seed planted in good ground, right? That has this protection and has all the things that it needs in order to grow and be protected by God. And then the parable of the wheat and the tares seems to fit really nicely with these two seeds that have enmity between each other, and the things that we talked about previously, that vengeance is the Lord's, right? That there's no need for these people to come and remove the tares, because God is going to do these things, right? So
Exactly.
I just thought that was kind of cool.
Thank you for bringing all that back, because I think that's really the point I'm trying to make here. I'm probably beating it into the ground, but I just think it's neat just looking at the two brief descriptions of these lineages, or whatever you want to call them, that how different they are, and that underneath the surface we can see those two seeds. Those two seeds are constantly presenting themselves. You can put your hand down. I think it's still up. All right, so God appointed another seed to the woman in Abel's place, named Sheth, whose name means appointed. So now Seth is taking the role of this appointed son or appointed seed, who is going to carry on the family name. And then Seth names his son Enosh. So Cain named his son uh, Hanog, dedication, with the idea of dedicating this city to himself and to his name. And Seth names his son Enosh. So I want to look at Enosh. So this is the proper name. Enosh comes from the word Enosh, which is basically a mortal or a man. That's the word often used for like mankind and referencing man. So my thought was, could this be another clue of the distinction that God is making between the two seeds? Because we talked about how one seed is, and the likeness of that seed is called mankind, and man is created in the image and likeness of Elohim. But then we talked about that other seed that takes after the most cunning beast of the field, and after his image and likeness, the image and likeness of a beast, and those that receive that mark of the beast. So my thought on that was, that's interesting because it could be making that distinction again, that we're to walk like men who are made in God's image. And this coming through Adam's and the woman's seed line through Seth. And then again, this chapter ends by saying, then men began to call upon the name of Yehoshua. I don't want to get into that today because that's kind of a big topic that I do want to discuss next time. That I've got a study that I put together on it, so I'll share that with you all next time and some neat insight as to what I think the scriptures are telling us about that. That's all I have today. So does anybody have any comments or anything else that stands out in this chapter or anything you want to talk about?
No, I enjoy these studies, so I really appreciate the time you take to put these together, and they bring a lot of value to us. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Keith, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I was just going to mention. So yeah, this, and like Mike was saying, the idea between whether it's the wheat and the tares, or the good seed, the bad seed, this lineage has always been tracked throughout the scriptures. The Old Testament has got a lot of different names that are thrown around, and we get to these portions where it's naming the lineage, and we don't really realize all the value there until later on when there's battles and who's fighting who and who's what seed and different things of what's going on. And so you got Abraham with Isaac and Ishmael, and of course then Isaac's son, Jacob, had to fight with his brother Esau, and then Jacob's kids, they ended up having enmity against Joseph. And it's like, even though they're still part of the tribe, they weren't doing everything they were supposed to. So this idea of good seed versus bad seed, and then just exactly how terrible is the seed, because we know like Esau to this day is still got enmity against Israel and fighting against Israel. The idea that when you get introduced to the New Testament, one of the first things that Matthew and Luke do is they want to show you the lineage of how Messiah came through the good seed, right? And show all the way down that these are the two paths. And I know that and the paths are a little different, because I do believe the one in Matthew is of Mary's lineage, and the one of Luke is actually of Joseph's. But this idea that they had to show it, that was proof to the Jews of that time that this is Messiah. Messiah has come. Here, look, we can show you in the lineage. because that's how important these things are, is to understand, the
Mm-hmm.
path of the seed, because that's what was prophesied. So it's just
Yes.
incredible everywhere we're going to look that this conversation is going to continue on, and it's a foundation of the scriptures.
Yeah. Those are great points. And something you said made me think a little bit about something that we talked about previously. You talked about how Jacob or Joseph's brothers, there was that enmity between Joseph and his brothers. And, what if Joseph had taken vengeance upon Judah? He was in a position where he could have. Judah betrayed him, just like Judas Iscariot, same name, betrayed the Messiah. But Joseph did not, because he is a messianic figure, he did not take vengeance. He gave them room to repent. And so, had he not done that, the Messiah himself wouldn't have come through the line of Judah. So it's this idea of that we must not take vengeance again, and that there is room for repentance, because we were all of that seed. I don't want us to look at that as like, oh, that's them, and I'm so good and they're so bad. That's where we all are when we are under sin. We're under the authority of Satan. So it's only through the Son that we're made free. Janae, is that you?
It is. So I couldn't help but see this comparison between Ishmael and Isaac as well as you were talking. But I was also thinking a lot about how in Romans 8 it talks about the carnal mind has enmity against
Mm-hmm.
God, and how this
Mm-hmm.
really, we look at a lineage line and we think of human beings, the body, the son, the daughter, the granddaughter, on down. But my mind couldn't help but think of the battle is really against flesh and blood, right? That it isn't necessarily my children fighting each other, as in Cain and Abel fighting each other, as much as within ourself, it is that battle, that fight against God that is constantly there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't help but think about, sin is crouching at your door, and so all of those things kind of tied together to me back to Romans 8, because these are all things that it's not about the the law, it's about the relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because when you look
Even
at
though
the
I
law as
believe
like
in the
some kind of
law,
separate entity,
right?
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry.
But that's make a good point though, because Paul also talks about the letter of the law. So if we make the law the thing, we've lost sight of the lawgiver.
Right. I think because
That's a good point.
I battle so much in this space of, so many people saying to me, Janae, Jesus set us free from the law. And obviously we've had long conversations about that. And I am definitely in the same view as you. But I just feel like God keeps bringing it up to me that this is not necessarily, um, law over relationship, right? Law over, follow all the law and forget about the grace and the mercy. And then it just always keeps coming back to um, love, right? Like there's always
Mm-hmm.
room for the repentance of the person. And
Yeah.
in our flesh, we look at it and we go, "Ooh, the murderer! Like, get rid of him, kill him." Whatever we're gonna do, we will murder the
Mm-hmm.
murderer because we don't like the sin. And so I don't know. It seems like it's very generational as well, right? Like here's Cain and Abel fighting with it. Here's you know the enmity is always there in the family as well. And don't we see that today in our world? That's really where the the biggest struggle is in the world right now is in the family this way. And so I don't know. Those are just the things that came to my mind about it as you were talking.
Yeah, those are
Right?
good thoughts. No, I appreciate it. I appreciate the conversation. And this is also what Messiah said. I don't think I came to bring peace. I came to bring a sword, and that he's going to be dividing families because of this enmity. Uh, it's not what he wants to do. He doesn't want us to be at odds with our families, but that's just the nature of it, of those who hear and receive the words and of those who don't.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Anybody else have any comments or things they'd like to add on to that? I see a hand. Is that still like, is that an old
No,
hand?
it's me. Sorry. My hand was getting really tired.
Okay. Well,
Sorry.
yeah. Well, good. Okay. Well, if anybody has anything else to speak now. Otherwise, we can wrap it up early.
This is Pat. I just have one comment, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
I was taken back today in today's study about how Cain was so intentional about his rebellion, and how that you just really stuck with him all of those years. You know, I guess I never realized that, but how it just went on for, generation, and, it had to mean something he passed to his children as well, but that was really eye-opening. So thank you. Thank you for that. That just gave me some things to think about. That's just pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, when you look at that, it's like, why are we being given this information about, he's doing this and he fathered this guy and he does this? Nowhere is the name of Yehoshua mentioned. And it's just kind of like they're doing their own thing. That's how I was looking at it. And I know if we look into their names and stuff, there's probably some more messages in there as well. I didn't really get into that for our study, but and then it just simply comes back to Adam again saying, simple, these guys call upon the name of the Lord. And I just think that's really poignant message that it goes along with everything we're seeing so far up until this point. But again, that little sentence there can be troublesome. Say again?
It just was really good stuff. Thank you so much.
Oh, good. Thank you. I'm glad. Useful information. All right.
Tracy,
Well,
I also
praise the
think
Lord. And
sorry,
what?
Tracy. I was also going to say, with what Pat said as well is, how the things we do in our home carry into generation, right? Like a lot of times, even like the works of our hands, like if your dad was a carpenter, your son becomes a carpenter, all of these things. And I think it really, and something I wish I would have known before I was 50, the importance of what we do, right?
Yeah.
Now that I'm a grandmother
Yeah.
and I'm looking at my kids, it just grieves my heart that I didn't know before, right?
I
However,
understand that.
when you look at Genesis 4:26 and it says, "Then men began to call upon the name of Yahweh," like there is still a chance that that can happen in our lineage.
Yeah.
Not that we should be looking for our lineage,
Yes.
but I think it's a sign of hope. So
Absolutely.
I'm glad Pat pointed
And
that out.
I understand. Yeah. And that's something that we have is hope because we know him. We know that hope. And that's why it's so important for us to live according to his ways and to glorify him in the things we do and the way we act, and that we don't act as hypocrites. Because that is what the world sees. They see the hypocrisy of religion, that people aren't living out the things that they're saying. And it's something that they can't get behind. But when you become hearers and doers, it makes your walk different. You're going to walk differently than the religious. And that will be, it may take a long time, but that will be a testimony to your own family, because they will see a true change in you. Like, this is not the person I thought I knew. And that's just a testament to his spirit and his goodness that's working in you. And
For
that's how we
1,000
glorify him.
generations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Amen. Well, I really enjoy you guys talking to me. This is a treat for me. So thank you. So I guess if there's nothing else, we can wrap it up. I don't know if Mike's still here or if anybody else wants to pray, or if not, I can pray. Okay, well, I will pray. Abba Yahovah, thank you for this word. Thank you for guiding us in your truth. Thank you for healing us. We believe that you are our healer, and I'm just speaking for all those of us who are out there struggling with our bodies and our flesh. This temporary vessel that we know you have the power over because you created it, you know how it works, and you know how to heal us. And we just pray that you will help us to work with you toward health, and we pray that you will help us to glorify you in our trials and our tribulations and all the things that we are struggling with, that you'll be with us and give us your peace. And we just thank you for this time together and for giving us your Shabbat. And we love you and we thank you. In Yehoshua's name we pray. Amen.